Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to Supporter Spotlight number 34. I've got 4 replays for you today, a pair of heavy tanks, this tank destroyer, and a light tank game as well. And the light tank game is going to be kind of an antidote to this game because, well, the AT-15A is not especially a fast machine, so I figured we'd have something to counterbalance this. We're starting off with Katia here. She has to be one of the few people that really likes this machine. It's not especially popular. One of the reasons is that it's quite slow, and at least it has limited matchmaking these days, but of course that wasn't always the case. You know, come to think of it, this is going to take a little while. It's just the nature of the thing, I suppose. I think maybe we'll come back to that. So we'll jump over to Island Man in the completely balanced OI experimental. He does have the top 105mm gun, and so even in a tier 6 game, this is still a very dangerous bit of firepower to be packing. Of course, the armour isn't that great. It is by far the most mobile of the Japanese heavies, but it's also the most weakly armoured of the Japanese heavies. Now, it's still 75mm armour all around, but what makes it rather potent, shall we say, is the fact that this gun has the highest damage of any non-derp gun at tier 5. On a heavy tank, at least. I mean, previously it was the BDR G1B's 90mm gun. Oh, Island Man, that's just cruel. And that's just karma, I guess. Bouncing on a lead with this gun. Well, okay then. Yeah, the BDR, that used to be the trade-off for the fact that the BDR is not particularly well armoured. It's rather tall, a bit awkward to play, but you had that very nice 90mm gun to work with. And then the OI came along, which is really quite fast for a heavy tank and has this ridiculous 300 damage gun. So, yeah. Anyway, that OI looks like he's going to get to safety and then stops, which is a slight miscalculation, maybe just an ever so slight one. The Lee once again pokes his head out, takes a big hit, but fortunately not from Island Man, because that would have killed him. Hell, Island Man's gun could kill him outright. That's one of the joys of meeting these things when you're in a tier 3 and a tier 4 tank, is they can just one-shot you. Now, some derp guns already can, but like I've said, this is not a derp gun. This is just a regular 105mm gun. So, yeah. That M6, also not the best player, just sitting there and taking it. Which is fine for Island Man, it's more damage for him, but not so good given that that's a top tier enemy heavy. I mean, the enemy team was probably not best pleased with his performance. So they're winning here nicely. There is one enemy tank on the cap. And is that Matilda going to peek? Why, yes, he is. He's had a lot of very incautious opponents in this one, which is always nice when you're toting a big gun. You're less likely to see that happening at the higher tiers, of course. People are maybe more aware of the fact that there are very big guns in play around them. But at this tier, I mean, it doesn't take that long to get to tier 5. It really doesn't. So you get a lot of maybe less experienced players. Anyhow, that's Tog. The armour is absolutely not going to stand up to this gun. If it was a one-on-one fight on open ground, actually the Tog would possibly do quite well if you had both tanks at full health, because of course the rate of fire on the Tog is very good. That bounce though. But when Island Man was able to peekaboo like that, well, he didn't take a single hit from the Tog. So that just leaves the low health M1, M8 even, 1A or whatever it's called. The M8A1, there we go. Got there eventually. Island Man also got quite a nice sniping kill on that Chaffee, who just stayed out a little bit too long. And then it all goes wrong. He takes a big hit from an enemy OI experimental and actually loses a bit more health to fire. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. Suddenly this just got a bit more interesting. Of course, you can easily hit that guy back in return. He's completely out in the middle of the open. But I suspect Island Man just didn't know he was there. So that's him dealt with. We're almost now at 3,000 damage. have I mentioned how very balanced this gun is at tier 5? And of the enemy tanks, well, there's a Cromwell who's got 3 kills but is now massively outnumbered. And then there's that M6. I don't think the M6 is going to turn this one around somehow. He's not proven to be the best player. In fact, place your bets now. Do you think the M6 is going to be more or less where he was last spotted? What do you think the chances are? So again, sniping for the kill. That time it was on the Cromwell. He actually had 2 hits. Now just about 3,500 damage. And although this M6 could kill him, he wants that top gun. So we're going to skip ahead very slightly. And oh, there he is. Well, he had moved a little bit, but only a little bit. And with that final sniping hit, I mean, that wasn't exactly a close range shot, he gets the top gun. That was also, of course, unsurprisingly, a high caliber game, and all of that combined to give him an ace tanker. So there you go, the completely balanced OI experimental. It's one of the reasons why playing the mid-tiers is just so much fun since the Japanese heavies came in. That and the OI, it's just magnificent wargaming. I don't know what you were thinking, but it was just magnificent in its scale or scope or, you know, awfulness. One of those words. So there we are. A 50k profit from the damage. Tier 5's a pretty good place to grind credits, even if you don't have a premium account. It would have been 31k. That's not too bad. So yeah, it was a pretty solid ace. So let's see how Katia's getting on. Yeah, okay, that might be a while yet. So on to Sebedi in the AMX-50B, a very, very different beast from the Japanese heavies indeed. And this is maybe a little appropriate to have, given that we've just had the Swedish tanks come into the game, with, of course, the tier 8, 9 and 10 all being heavy autoloaders. Now, they're rather different from the French machines. I think the 50B is still a pretty powerful tank. This is a slightly older game. I think this is, what, 9.13, 9.14, something like that. In the most recent patch, I mean, the tier 9 and 10 actually got buffed, which makes them even better, potentially. They both got buffed gun elevation and depression, and that's especially useful on the tier 9, the 5120, because that was always a very awkward tank to play. It's had a very poor elevation range in particular, but the depression was also not particularly fantastic. But the 50B was always more comfortable, and the fact that that's also had a bit of a buff is quite nice. So that first clip, I mean, it was a half a clip really, it was a bit inconsequential. There's nothing doing there really. 50B games, in fact the French autoloader games generally, it's funny, you can have very kind of solid textbook games easily, but it's quite hard to have flashy, spectacular games in them, because whereas with, say, the Bat Chat, you've got the speed to get away with maybe more ridiculous things, you don't quite have that in the heavies. So what you tend to have to do in a successful French autoloader game is to be very firmly on the second line to begin with. You do not want to be at the forefront of the action. You basically have to make use of your allies' armor and hit points and try and basically deal as much damage as you can from a distance, because your ultimate goal is to survive through to the late game, at which point there are going to be, in principle, hopefully, a bunch of low health enemies running around, and at that point you become incredibly powerful. So that's an M103 finished off. That's the power of that clip right there. Some people really don't like autoloaders in this game. For some people, autoloaders are on a par with artillery, and I honestly don't quite see it the same way, although the fact that they then combined an autoloader with artillery, you know, that's super fun, right? But yeah, personally I think autoloaders make for a nice different style of gameplay. And the thing about autoloaders is, unless it's at that late game stage and somebody runs up to you in an autoloader and there's not much you can do about it, generally speaking, if you know they're out there, you can adjust your play accordingly. Sounds a bit of a hasty shot on the 50B, but he places the last shell in that clip much more carefully. Not enough to kill the 50B, but I mean the 110 was full health. I'm not entirely sure why that enemy 50B ran in like that. I mean, it's not like he was running in against a low health enemy that he would be able to easily clip. Instead, he was running in against multiple enemies. So it was really just kind of throwing it away. Zebedee is doing it right. The enemy 50B, not so much. So again, looking for shots over on that eastern flank, see if we can help his allies. And that's a Jaegeru, that's a very high priority target. Bit of a troll bounce there, that's the second hit. Let's see if we can get his last one to count. And no, oh well, 2 out of 4. The armour on that thing at this range, even against a very good gun like the 50B has, it's just troll enough that even the side of a Jaegeru can be quite surprisingly bouncy. So again, reloading, finishing off the Jaegeru would be nice. His allies have interrupted the cap, and well, that mouse is not looking like he's going to last much longer. They've basically lost that eastern flank, but crucially, they've done enough. The tanks over there and Zebedee as well, they've done enough damage to significantly hurt those tanks. So at this point, he's got to concentrate on helping his allies clear up these tanks around here, and then they can deal with those tanks pushing in from the east. For some reason, the IS-7, and I don't know why, but the IS-7 on their team decided to go for a little drive along the stream bed. Not entirely sure what the IS-7 was doing in this game. Anyway, so comes in and decides to just trade to kill some tanks, or at least do some damage. He does trade a bit of a chunk of his health away against that T-54, and he doesn't actually get the kill, but he's left that T-54 a one-shot, crucially. He also took out the CDC. Maybe it would have been better to put his entire clip into the T-54 and let somebody else finish off the CDC, because the T-54 overall is the more dangerous tank. But even though that maybe wasn't quite 100% ideal, well, that guy is now low health. However, this is a bit of a problem. So the T-54 is now even lower health, which is, of course, a rather attractive prospect for Zebedee, and he actually gets the kill. He also had a bounce from that AMX, not AMX, the E50, but that was probably one that went into the hull armor, or maybe bounced off the gun. So the E50M comes round and takes an opportunistic shot, and fortunately Zebedee had his repair kit available because that was his ammo rack. And of course, being stuck on the reload right now means he's entirely helpless. There's nothing he can do here. He's relying on this one other surviving ally, the object. So, I don't know what happened there. I don't know if that was a replay derp or if somebody had some lag there, but either way, yes, he gets the E50M kill. I'm kind of surprised the Object 140 didn't take the kill, but maybe the Object was trying to feed him a Top Gun, because he's awfully close to one now. He does take that Gorilla out, however. I mean, he wasn't going to sit and take a hit from the Gorilla. And that just leaves the enemy mouse, who is now in a very, very unfortunate position, at least as far as he's concerned, because the mouse alone and unsupported like this is a very sad tank indeed when facing multiple enemies, especially when facing things like autoloaders and medium tanks, because it cannot really react. The mouse is only strong if you can keep your best armor towards people, and if you can keep your sides and rear protected, and ideally you need allies to do that. So the 140 could be killing this guy. He does take a shot, but I think he basically, and he says in the chat, for you, I think he basically held off killing the mouse, and I think with his rate of fire he probably could have killed the mouse. I think he fed that Top Gun to Zebedee. You know, Zebedee was sitting there on 5 kills, and the Object 140 was clearly thinking, well, you've maybe played decently enough, and clearly he has, because look at that damage count. Top of the team, 1200 damage, 6 kills, 7,259 damage. Not half bad. That IS-7, by contrast, 0. And they also had an ST-1 that did no damage as well. But some of the medium tanks on the team did do rather well for themselves, including that Object 140. So, yes, it was overall a nice team effort, but Sebidi's damage really did stand out from the rest. So, back to Katia, and she's almost out of the action, so let's see how this is going to go. I've teased you enough with this. So this is a top tier game, which is as good as it gets for the AT-15. There is, however, a Burt on the enemy team, which might be a bit of a problem. Some of those enemy tank guns could also be very nasty if they know where to spot. So what she's doing is just driving forwards and pushing the enemy and massively abusing that rate of fire. And it's maybe not ideal, but then sometimes in the British tank destroyers you have to just put up with not ideal, because if you sit all the way at the back, well, the action can really get away from you. But of course, the closer you are to the enemy, the easier it is for them to hit your weak spots. But fortunately, this particular set of enemies don't seem terribly interested in going for a weak spot. Now that VK3001, you know, that guy's not going to have a lot of success. Well, he's firing HE for one thing, but he would really have to be going for her cupola. And he's not, he's just firing HE at the front of her tank. And he's actually doing some tracking damage, but nothing particularly to worry about. The Tiger does finally get in a hit. The T-29 seems to be ignoring her completely, so that's okay. And as for the Burt, well, I guess he's just out of range. Now, as we're only 4 minutes in, you'd think maybe a few more tanks on each side would be alive, but no, this is one of those games where a lot of people die very, very rapidly. And as you can see on the western flank, well, they did have some tanks over there, but they are now done for, so it's just a KV-85 and an AMX-13 artillery back at the base. This Tiger, meanwhile, seems entirely uninterested in doing anything other than hiding behind this wreck. I mean, he's put one shot into Katia already, but although potentially he could be very dangerous, he's not playing like somebody that maybe is that dangerous. So keeping the angle, using the rate of fire, I mean the 17-pounder gun at tier 7, especially as it gets limited matchmaking, is a pretty nice place to be. And then she takes the axle, so this guy is now just screwed. The rate of fire is in fact more than good enough to just permatrack somebody with this thing. Look at this, this guy just does not stand a chance. There we go. So that's over 2,000 damage done, not too shabby. The enemy Burt is apparently dead by now. I missed that message coming up. They do, however, still have some tanks left alive, a couple of mediums and a pair of tank destroyers, and the Scorpion and the T-67 in particular might be troublesome. The T-67 because of its speed, and the Scorpion because it has potentially a fairly nasty little 90mm gun, and it's also reasonably stealthy. So the T-67 gets spotted going back to the enemy base. The Scorpion takes out their Tiger, so we know the Scorpion is on this side. He was last spotted up in C2, as we can see from the minimap, but he's obviously come all the way back to the base, which it has got the speed to do. I mean, it only tops out at about 40, but because it's such a ridiculously tiny little machine, it has a pretty crazily good power-to-weight ratio for a tank destroyer. So Katia just goes for it. She just presses forward, gets tracked by the Scorpion, who I don't know if that was APCR from the T-34 there or the Scorpion, but either way, somebody's firing prem shells. I think it must have been the T-34. The Scorpion, as it turns out, not actually in any kind of cover, and because I mean this maybe seems a bit crazy what Katia's doing, and if this was a tier 8 game and that was tier 8 tank destroyers firing at her, then maybe it would be a bit crazy. But in this case, well, for a tank like this with weak spots, the further away you are, the harder it is for people to hit those weak spots. It's a smaller target. So it was maybe a little risky, but it paid off. But if you're facing, I mean from tier 8 upwards, you've got machines like the ISU, the T-28 Prot. I mean, these are all machines with a lot higher pen, which can suddenly ignore the armour. They don't have to necessarily aim for weak spots. So you might get troll bounces, but they'll probably just go through wherever they pen you frontally. As for the other mediums, well, they went for the friendly cap, but as you can see there, the rest of her allies were able to successfully defend. So that was a steel wall and a high caliber first class there, and a couple of other badges. And with the nearly 3,000 damage, it was just shy of 2,900, she was able to place fairly well at the top of the team with nearly 2,000 base XP. With nearly 2,000 base, not 2,000, wow, that would be impressive. Nearly 1,200 base XP. I'm honestly a little bit surprised that wasn't an ace tanker. 1,200 seems pretty good on an AT-15A. Maybe it was just shy of an ace tanker. She also had nearly 900, just about 850 assistance damage there as well, so that obviously contributed. So yeah, I'm honestly surprised that wasn't an ace. And then we come to an ELC game, and yeah, that guy that IB the one true nub is platooned up with looks awfully familiar somehow. I'm sure he's really smart and handsome, and probably, you know, somebody that all the ladies want and all the men want to be friends with, or possibly the other way around, I don't know. Don't even know where I'm going with that thought. But yeah, no, this isn't going to be about my game here, platooned with IB the one true nub. No, this is going to be his game, because I'm going to play the ELC as you can play it. Well, one of the ways you can play it, I'm going to play it as a kind of pseudo tank destroyer. IB the one true nub, on the other hand, is going to just go hell for leather and do silly things. And this is one of those games we had at the end of a Patreon session. And so, you know, we're blowing off steam a bit. Sometimes we play the Panzer IIJ, sometimes we get out the fast tanks, and we just derp around and do silly things. Although in my case, I wasn't really derping around doing silly things. I was being very boring and sitting in a bush and trying to hit things from a range. Anyway, I was occupying the attention of that T-43, and that allowed Nub to come up round behind, just go and plant one in his ass, and then run away again. And as it turns out, that's a little bit risky, because there's a T-34-85 down in the arches of the bridge for some reason. But he missed, so that's fine, that doesn't concern Nub too much. The enemy team does have a pair of ELCs as well, but one's dead already, and the other one is on the other side of the map, as we can see. So I'm currently trying to help chivvy all these mediums that are on the south flank to go forwards, because that's quite a lot of our team. Nub, meanwhile, is going to go and try and put some fire in to the all the tanks on the high ground, because that's quite a lot of the enemy team. It looks rather like our team might actually get overrun. But although it looks like he was going to try and maybe put some side fire in on the OR and the T-29, instead, once again, he just decides to go hell for leather and maybe take out some artillery. I mean, he's spotted a camping tank destroyer in the process, but of course he's almost got to be there we go, he's definitely seen. And it turns out not only do they have a T-34-85 camping by the railway arches, but they have an E2 who has barely left their cap circle. Let's hope it's not a derp E2, although it might very well be. He's also spotted one of the RT though, so that's also quite useful. So the E2 not paying attention to his minimap whatsoever. I mean, Nub just comes up right behind him. He was spotted for quite a long time there. The E2 has basically zero excuse. There we go, another shot into something, artillery in this case, and that's one RT down. And that's the souffle that hit him. Fortunately, it's not the big gun, I don't think. Although it could have been the big gun with a low roll. If it's a maximum roll, it's... well, I'll say maximum roll. An average roll on that gun is like 220. Talking of derps, though, as it turns out, the T-34-85 has a derp gun. So, yeah. I mean, this is the kind of thing, when you're making these kind of plays, you do not expect there to be two mediums just so close to the enemy base. Doesn't especially make sense that they would be there, but they were. Anyhow, they're both done for because they were in pretty stupid positions. The souffle, however, looks like he was coming back down towards the capture defend. We of course know the M44's down there as well. But on the northwest side, well, our teammates are almost done. The IS-2 is now alone and surrounded. So Nub once again climbing up to the higher ground, and I think I was joining him at this point. Maybe trying to see if he can get some shots on either SU-100 or the Souffle, but no, turning around back towards the middle. And there goes the IS-2. So it's just us on this high ground now, but we can still win this. I mean, it does look fairly even on numbers, but we can still win this. We're the ones pressuring their cap. They have to respond to this. So Nub gets into some bushes, and there we go, some nice spots. The side of the OI is just gravy for this gun. Just let him aim, and there we go. Slightly high roll, 262, not bad. The M44 kills him off, so that's one less enemy heavy, and just goes forward enough to reacquire the T29. And that's a shot from me. Nub does actually hit him, but it only takes the tracks. However, that then makes him an easier shot for artillery potentially, or at least it gives us time to reload. And there we go, Nub gets the kill. So that just leaves 3 enemies, RT, an ELC, and an SU-100. At this point, I decide Nub's been having all the fun. I'm just gonna... Oh, wait. Yeah, I decided to go ELC jousting, and I lost, but never mind. These things happen. So that just leaves the SU-100, and we have very conclusively won this at this point. Even though, normally in this kind of situation where you lose the high ground and you've got a lot of your team being mediums all on the south flank, quite often that can go wrong. But in this case, it has worked out rather well. I think that's probably due in large part to Nub running around like a blue-arsed fly and rather disrupting the enemy team, and, you know, uncovering the fact they had a couple of useless tanks back at base, apart from anything else. So, Scout Medal, or is that a patrol duty? I can never remember which one's which. And an ace tanker from that. Bit of a silly game, but that's what the ELC is all about. It is just ridiculous fun. 1100 damage. Doesn't seem that impressive, right? Well, there's going to be a bit of spotting damage to go with that as well. And also, don't look at my score. My score's terrible. I'm sure caption guy's thinking a thing right now. So, yeah, 1100 damage, but alongside that, 2,375 spotting and assistance damage. So, I imagine that helps just a little bit as well. So there we go. If that wasn't an antidote to AT-15A gameplay, I'm not sure what is, but overall that was rather a fun game, and it was just one I happened to be in myself. So hopefully you have enjoyed this roundup of Patreon replays. If you have, you can hit the like button. You can leave any comments below. You can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.